Every day, the morning sun in Yola had a way of entering every corner of the Bello house as if it came to gossip. It would pour through the windows, touch the curtains, and land directly on Safiya's face just when she was pretending to still be asleep. But on this particular morning, she didn't even turn. She just lay flat on her side and squeezed her face like someone who had swallowed sour lime. On the other side of the bed, Ibrahim was already awake, scrolling through his phone and pretending not to see her, even though he had been watching her eyelashes move since dawn. For 3 days, they had not spoken a single word to each other, not one, and this was the longest record in their 6-year marriage. Even the neighbors had started to notice. They still shared the same bed though, but if you looked at them from above, you would think someone had drawn an invisible line across the middle with the instruction, cross and die. It all started from something small, like all great wars do. Safiya had accused Ibrahim of using her body cream, the expensive one she bought from Mubi markets. Ibrahim said she was too proud and didn't want to believe he had his own Vaseline. Well, she said his Vaseline finished 2 weeks ago, but he said she was counting his Vaseline like a witch counting chickens. She told him if he wanted to shine like a bride, he should buy his own cream. He then said he didn't even want to shine beside her kind of attitude. And that was it. Boom. The Cold War began. Now, the house had become a silent battlefield. When Safiya cooked, she made sure to bang the pot lids loud enough for him to hear. When Ibrahim entered the room, he would clear his throat dramatically and walk out as if the air in the room was polluted. And since they couldn't communicate now, their cousin Aisha, a 20-year-old university student who was staying with them, had become the poor messenger. "Aisha, tell your uncle the food is ready," Safiya would say without even raising her head. Aisha would sigh and walk to the sitting room. "Uncle, Auntie said I should tell you that the food is ready." "Tell her I am not hungry," Ibrahim would answer, with his eyes glued to his newspaper that he had not even opened. Aisha would return like a referee in a hopeless match. "Auntie, Uncle said I should tell you that he is not hungry." "Then tell him the food will go cold, not me," Safiya would say, flipping her hair. One evening, Aisha got tired and said, "Both of you should please start using phone calls inside the house. I cannot be your post office." Ibrahim hissed, "Young people of nowadays don't even respect elders. She doesn't know she's talking to her uncle." Safiya clapped her hands dramatically. "Elders that don't talk to their wives? Better keep your elderliness to yourself, I beg." The whole house was vibrating with unspoken tension. Even the ceiling fan started making strange noises, as if it was tired of their malice too. Their neighbor, Malam Dogo, who was an old man with a long beard and a love for minding people's business, had started asking questions. One afternoon, he knocked on their door with his usual smile. "Assalamu alaikum, Ibrahim, how is madam?" Ibrahim adjusted his cap and said, "She's fine, Malam." From inside the kitchen, Safiya shouted, "Tell him I am not madam, I am fine on my own." Malam Dogo chuckled and shook his head. "You people should be careful. 2 goats cannot drink water from one pot if one keeps kicking the other." But pride had already built a mansion in both their hearts. Safiya said she would not be the first to talk. And Ibrahim swore on his grandfather's grave that he would rather greet the world than greet her first. The next morning, Safiya cooked tunwo shikafa with groundnut soup. She deliberately made it smell like paradise. The aroma filled the whole compound that even the neighbor's cats came close to the window meowing. Ibrahim's stomach was growling, but his pride said, "Don't go." So he sat in the sitting room pretending to read a file. But every 3 minutes, he inhaled deeply like a man sniffing forgiveness. Aisha passed by and whispered, "Uncle, just go and eat before pride kills you." He frowned. "Eat what? Who said I am hungry?" However, 5 minutes later, he sneaked into the kitchen with cat steps. opened the pot and saw heaven staring back at him. He scooped a little with his finger just to taste for salt. Suddenly, Safia's voice came from behind him. "Oh, so now I have a body cream thief and food thief combined?" Ibrahim almost jumped out of his skin. "Who said I am stealing? I was only checking if the gas was on." "Oh, I see. Gas off, spoon on, right?" Safia replied and walked away proudly. Ibrahim wanted to say sorry, but his mouth refused to open. Instead, he shouted after her, "Next time, don't cook food that disturbs people's peace." That night, both of them lay on the bed again, back to back, each thinking of how to win the war without surrender. Safia replayed their fights in her head, wondering if she overreacted, while Ibrahim stared at the ceiling, wondering why he couldn't just say sorry. Suddenly, the power went off, the fan stopped, and mosquitoes started singing near their ears. In anger, Ibrahim shouted, "Where's the mosquito coil?" But Safia answered sharply, "Ask your Veslin." Aisha burst out laughing from the next room. "These people are comedians." Well, none of them laughed. Safia hissed and turned her back again, whispering, "If he wants silence, I will give him Silence Pro Max." While Ibrahim folded his arms and muttered, "Let's see who breaks first." In spite of their grumbling that night, the house was still dark, hot and noisy with mosquitoes. Three perfect witnesses to the madness of two adults fighting a war that words could have ended because they had sworn that their house would be known as the House of Silence. The next morning, the sun rose like it had no shame. It poured its light through the window as if it came to also watch the show between Safia and Ibrahim. The house was quiet again, but not peaceful. Theirs was the kind of silence of two people who were thinking of new ways to annoy each other without talking. Safia woke up before Ibrahim and started sweeping the room. Every time her broom brushed near his leg, she made sure it touched him slightly. Ibrahim, who was pretending to be asleep, finally hissed, "If you want to sweep my body, just say it." Safia replied, "No, I am just sweeping pride out of the house." Ibrahim jumped up and said, "Then start from yourself." Safia turned and gave him a look that could fry egg. "Wallahi, you will not survive my silence today." That was how the second round of Malice began, this time with official stubbornness. From that day, they started competing on who could act like the other didn't exist. If Ibrahim came into the kitchen, Safia would immediately flip her hair and walk out. If Safia was in the sitting room, Ibrahim would suddenly remember that he needed to check something in the bedroom. The only language they spoke was noise of movement, their doors closing, plates clashing, and slippers slapping thighs. Even Aisha, who used to enjoy staying in their house, began visiting her friend every evening. She told her friend, "Those people are too dramatic. Even Nollywood people no reach them. I am just waiting for the season finale." One afternoon, Safia cooked rice and stew. As usual, she didn't call Ibrahim to eat. She just dropped the food on the table and sat to watch her favorite Hausa TV drama. Ibrahim, who was in the room pretending to be on the phone, came out when the smell of fried meat reached him. "So, she cooked rice and things are big? It belongs to me anyway," he muttered. He walked to the kitchen, saw the food and smiled to himself. He brought another plate, dished his own portion and carried it to the sitting room. When Safia saw him eating, she hissed, "Ah, so people who don't talk can now eat food cooked by people they don't see?" Ibrahim swallowed slowly and said, "Food doesn't keep malice." Safia clapped her hands. "Good. When you finish, go and tell your food good night." He ignored her, but his heart was beating fast because she still looked beautiful even when angry. Safia too kept glancing at him, wondering if she should just break the silence, but pride held her tongue. She remembered how her friends had mocked her before, saying she tolerated her husband too much. So she told herself, not this time. Later that night, something funny happened. Ibrahim, out of habit, forgot they were fighting and shouted from the bedroom, "Safia, where's my towel?" From the kitchen, Safia shouted, "Ask your Vaseline." The whole compound heard it, and the neighbors' children laughed so hard that even Ibrahim had to hide his face with the towel when he finally found it. The next morning, Ibrahim decided to start what he called Operation Pretend to be Happy. He dressed sharply for work, wore his best perfume, and whistled loudly in the sitting room so that Safia could hear. Life is sweet when there is peace of mind, he said loudly while spraying his body. Safia came out of the room and folded her arms. Peace of mind indeed. Some people would have just married their perfume. Ibrahim smiled and said, "At least the perfume doesn't argue." Safia grabbed the broom and shouted, "Keep testing me, oh Ibrahim Bello. Keep testing me. One day, I will show you the real drama." Aisha, who had been in the corner minding her business, said, "These people don't need therapy. They need camera crew." Unfortunately, this particular silent war continued for weeks and began to have shape and structure. They both got used to using Aisha as their human loudspeaker. "Aisha, tell your uncle to stop blocking the bedroom with his towel." "Aisha, tell your auntie that the remote control is not her inheritance." One evening, Aisha lost her patience. She stood in the middle of the sitting room, dropped her phone and shouted, "Enough! I am not your microphone. If you people want to kill each other, do it directly now. Me, I am tired though." Ibrahim and Safia both turned to her shocked. Then, without thinking, they shouted at the same time, "Don't you dare shout at us in this house again." It was the first time they spoke together in weeks, and it came out like thunder. Aisha blinked and then she smiled. "Aha! So you people can talk. Wonderful. Anyway, eat together. Let me go and rest. Maybe you will quarrel about salt and Maggi." But they didn't. Instead, they both hissed and went back to their rooms, each feeling secretly embarrassed for shouting together. 2 days later, Safia woke up vomiting. She held her stomach and felt dizzy. Aisha ran to her side, frightened. "Auntie, should I call Uncle?" Safia waved her hand weakly. "No, don't call him. He won't care." But when Ibrahim heard coughing from the room, his heart jumped. He rushed in, only to meet her slumped on the bed. "Safia!" he shouted, shaking her shoulder. But she didn't respond. He panicked, lifted her into the car and drove straight to the hospital like a madman. At the hospital, Dr. Zakari, a calm middle-aged man who knew both of them, examined her quickly. "She is exhausted and dehydrated," he said. "Has she been under any stress lately?" Ibrahim swallowed hard. "No, not really, just..." Well, he couldn't even finish the sentence because the truth was burning his tongue. That night, he sat beside her hospital bed watching her sleep with tubes in her arm. He wanted to hold her hand, but shame kept his fingers stiff. Aisha sat beside him, shaking her head. "Uncle, see your life, oh. You people were fighting for who is right, and now you don't even know if she'll wake up." Ibrahim muttered, "She'll wake up. She has to." And she did. When she finally opened her eyes, her voice was weak but still sharp. "Why am I here?" Ibrahim tried to smile. "You fainted. I brought you." "Oh, so you can now talk to me?" she muttered with a faint smirk. Ibrahim sighed deeply. "Please don't start." Safia turned her face to the wall. "Then keep your words. I am tired." And just like that, the silence started again because they were both stubborn hearts that loved each other but didn't know how to say sorry. That night, Ibrahim sat alone in the hospital corridor, staring into space and whispering, "Ya Allah, is this what pride does to people?" But no one answered him. Safia came back home from the hospital 2 days later, weak but still carrying thunder on her face. The moment Ibrahim parked the car in front of their compound, she stepped out slowly with her bag and walked straight inside without a word, while he followed behind like a man being dragged by his shadow. The neighbors who saw them whispered among themselves, "Hey, maybe they are finally settled," though, one of them said. But nah, the war had only changed shape. Inside the house, Safia sat on the bed and said, "You can drop my bag there." Ibrahim obeyed but muttered under his breath, "Hospital taught you nothing." She heard him clearly and frowned. "What did you just say?" "I said the bag is heavy." But Safiya fired back, "You should check your pride next time. It is heavier." And that was how another silence was reborn again, freshly ironed and ready to wear. It got worse that it even started to affect Ibrahim's productivity. He began forgetting things at work. His boss, Mr. Danlami, called him into the office one morning. "Ibrahim, what is going on with you lately? You used to be sharp, but now you are making mistakes like an NYSC boy." "I am sorry, sir," Ibrahim said calmly. "Sorry doesn't fix missing project files, Ibrahim. The committee meeting was waiting for that file this morning. If not for Suleiman, who found a backup copy, you would have been in trouble." Ibrahim apologized again, but his mind wasn't in the office. It was wandering back to Safiya, to the way she had fainted, and to how close he came to losing her. Meanwhile, back home, their cousin Aisha was trying her best to create peace. She would purposely start random conversations in front of both of them, hoping one would respond and the other would follow. But it never worked. One evening, she said loudly, "You know, I read somewhere that couples who stay silent for too long can develop heart disease." Safiya replied without even looking up. "Then he should check his heart." Ibrahim coughed. "My heart is fine. It is you who was sick in this house." "What did you just say?" Safiya snapped. But Ibrahim coughed and walked out. Aisha dropped her spoon dramatically. "Ya Allah, even United Nations cannot fix you too." And it was true, because by now the couple had both obtained a PhD in Malice, and they were always flaunting their power of silence at every slightest opportunity. They no longer prayed together, or ate together, or watched TV together. Their house became so quiet that even their wall clock sounded like a talking drum. Then, one Friday afternoon, Safiya got a call from Mubi. Her cousin was getting married and begged her to come early to help with the wedding preparations. She hesitated, but then thought, maybe some space will help her breathe. So, she told Ibrahim she was leaving. He just nodded. Safe journey. Without a single emotion or eye contact, she wanted to say, "Will you miss me?" But pride swallowed her words, so she left him like that. 2 days later, Safiya was already in Mubi, surrounded by relatives. She began to relax a little, helping with decorations and gossiping with cousins. But deep inside, something was still heavy. It was like her heart was carrying unspoken words. Back in Yola, Ibrahim came home one evening to find the house too quiet. He missed her nagging without realizing it. He ate alone, washed the plate himself, and even scolded himself aloud. See your life, you can't even find your socks. The next morning, Ibrahim was at work when his phone rang. It was Malam Dogo, the neighbor, calling. "Ibrahim, are you at home?" "No, Malam, what happened?" "There is fire in your compound, though. The small store at the back of your house is burning." Ibrahim dropped the phone and ran back home immediately. Smoke was rising like a dark cloud above his house. Neighbors were already fetching water and shouting. The fire had started from an electrical fault near the store where he kept old files and some household items. By the time they managed to quench it, parts of the roof had collapsed and some of Safiya's belongings were burnt. Her clothes, her teaching certificates, and her favorite handbag. Ibrahim stood there breathing heavily, covered in sweat and ash. The only thing he saw clearly through the smoke was Safiya's green wrapper half burnt on the floor. His chest tightened. For the first time, fear broke through his pride. He sat down on the ground and muttered, "Ya Allah, what have I done? What if she was in there?" Malam Dogo placed a hand on his shoulder. "My son, if a house is filled with silence, fire finds it easy to enter. Go and bring your wife back before silence kills what is left." That night, Ibrahim couldn't sleep. He called Safiya's number several times, but the network was bad. And then, when she finally picked up, he froze speechless. "Hello?" Safiya said. Ibrahim wanted to talk, but no word came out. "Ibrahim," she repeated. "Is everything okay?" Ibrahim swallowed hard. There was a fire, he finally said. What? The store. Some things got burnt, but don't panic. I am fine. Safia paused for a long time and then she said, you should have called me earlier. I didn't know what to say, Ibrahim confessed. Safia's eyes were instantly filled with tears as she sat on the bed in Mubi. For all her anger, she couldn't deny she still cared about him. The next day, she returned to Yola. When she stepped into the compound and saw the burnt section, her hands trembled. Her favorite wrapper, her certificates were all gone. Ibrahim stood beside her and said, we almost lost it all. She looked at him for a long time and then turned away. It's not about the fire, Ibrahim. It's about everything. We've been burning slowly for months and we didn't even smell the smoke. Ibrahim closed his eyes ashamed. You are right. That evening, for the first time, they sat together in silence that wasn't angry. They were just speechless from the realization. Later that night, when the rain started falling, Safia stood by the window. Ibrahim came behind her and said, you know, when I saw that fire, I imagined what would happen if I lost you, and suddenly, everything else didn't matter. Safia turned to him with teary eyes. So, what now? Ibrahim sighed deeply. Now, maybe we should stop punishing ourselves. Safia looked down. Maybe. Aisha, who had been pretending to sleep in the next room, whispered into her pillow, hey, finally. The morning after the fire, Safia sat outside on a low stool, holding a cup of tea that had gone cold. She wasn't even drinking it. She was just staring into it as if it might give her answers. Ibrahim came out quietly, still in his sleeping shirt. For a moment, he stood by the doorway watching her. He wanted to say something gentle, but the words were shy. He cleared his throat once, then twice, but nothing came. Safia didn't look up. She just said, if you have a cough, drink water. Ibrahim smiled nervously. I don't have a cough. I was thinking. She looked up. Thinking of what? That maybe we should rebuild together. Safia sighed. I have rebuilt this marriage so many times in my mind, Ibrahim. What's left to rebuild? Ibrahim walked closer, sat close to her and rubbed his palms together. You know, I haven't been this scared before in my life. I saw my life empty, just me and my pride. Safia looked at him long and hard and then smiled. Maybe that is what God wanted, for you to see what silence can burn. Ibrahim nodded slowly. You are right. I am sorry, Safia. The words were simple, but they dropped heavily like water on dry soil. Safia blinked fast, caught off guard. You are what? I am sorry for everything, for my pride, my silence, and for the way I treated you like an enemy in your own home. Safia looked down at her cup, hiding her trembling lips. I didn't expect you to say that. I didn't expect to mean it, he admitted. But I do, wallahi, I do. I am sorry. Tears began to form in her eyes, but she laughed through them. You are making it sound like a campaign speech. Ibrahim laughed too, shaking his head. Maybe, but at least I'll win this one. Later that week, Dr. Zakari came to check on Safia. Mr. and Mrs. Bello, he greeted as he entered. How is the peace conference going? Safia smiled. We are still negotiating, doctor. Dr. Zakari laughed. Good. At least you're talking. Silence is good for meditation, not for marriage. He took her blood pressure, checked her temperature and frowned slightly. You've been weak lately, right? Safia nodded. Yes, doctor. I am easily tired. I just thought it was stress. Stress, yes, he said slowly, but maybe something more. Let's do one small test. I want to be sure of something. 2 days later, Safia and Ibrahim went together to the clinic for the test. They sat side by side, awkward but united. Dr. Zakari adjusted his glasses, smiled and said, Congratulations, Safia, you are 2 months pregnant. For a full 5 seconds, both of them froze. Pregnant? Safia repeated. Yes, and you are very lucky too. The stress you've been through lately nearly caused complications. Ibrahim's mouth opened and then closed again. Doctor, You mean even after all that fighting? Dr. Zakari nodded. God walks quietly. Maybe this is your second chance. Safia turned to Ibrahim with teary eyes. All this while, I was carrying a life and we were fighting over Veslin. Ibrahim covered his face with both hands, shaking his head. Ya Allah, forgive us. Dr. Zakari smiled. Now you see, malice doesn't just kill love. It kills joy before it is even born. You both must learn. When pride enters a marriage, peace packs its bag. They nodded silently. That night, Safia sat on the bed, gently touching her stomach. Ibrahim came in, stood by the door for a while, and then knelt beside her. Safia, I want to be a better husband, not the kind who wins every argument, but the kind who keeps peace. Safia smiled weakly. And I will try to be a wife who listens more and shouts less. Ibrahim chuckled. Even if I use your body cream again? Safia hit him playfully with a pillow. Buy your own cream, please, Ibrahim bellowed. They both laughed until their sides ached. For the first time in months, laughter filled their house again. Later that night, Ibrahim woke up and watched Safia sleeping. Her face was peaceful and her hand was still on her belly. He whispered sadly, I almost lost this. I almost lost everything. By the time the rainy season was over, the Bello compound had changed, not just physically but spiritually. The bond store had been rebuilt and their relationship was waxing stronger. Safia was already 5 months pregnant and was glowing like early morning sun. She walked around with that pride of a woman who had seen trouble, survived trouble, and turned trouble into a testimony. Ibrahim too had changed. He was softer, humbler, and had suddenly become a man who could cook. One Saturday morning, he was in the kitchen frying eggs while singing loudly to an old Adamawa love song. Safia laughed from the bedroom. Ibrahim bellowed, your voice sounds like a generator that needs service. He shouted back, at least this one still produces light, unlike our silence before. They both burst out laughing. That had become their new rule. They could argue, but they must never go quiet. Even if Safia was angry, she would still talk. Sometimes she would shout, I don't even want to see your face again. And Ibrahim would reply, then close your eyes. And they would end up laughing again. It was funny how something as simple as communication became their new kind of romance. Even Aisha noticed the difference. She told her friend, these people have now turned fighting into comedy. I don't even know when to interfere again. One evening, Ibrahim returned from work looking worried. He dropped his briefcase and sighed. Safia, who was now 7 months pregnant, looked up from where she was cutting vegetables. What happened, Ibrahim? He hesitated, scratching his head. It's about the office. They are transferring me to Mubi for 3 weeks. Safia froze. Mubi, Ibrahim, that's far now. I know, Ibrahim said, but it's only temporary. I'll be back. Her face fell, but she didn't shout. Instead, she said, I don't like it, but okay, just promise me one thing. What? Ibrahim asked. Don't let silence travel with you, Safia said. Ibrahim smiled gently, walked up to her and placed a hand on her shoulder. Never again, Safia. Even if we quarrel, I will call you before sunset. I have learned my lesson. She nodded, smiling shyly. Good, because if you try that malice nonsense again, I will report you to Dr. Zakari. They both laughed until tears came out. The following month, Safia's baby shower was the talk of the neighborhood. Even Malam Dogo, their nosy neighbor, came wearing agbada and carrying a gift wrapped in newspaper. He lifted his walking stick and announced, this one I must attend though. I was here during the war. Now I must witness the peace. When everyone laughed, Safia said, Malam, you are the only one who believed we would survive our foolishness. Malam smiled. Of course, because I know 2 goats that fight long enough would eventually drink from the same bowl. The crowd roared with laughter. Ibrahim stood proudly beside his wife, rubbing her shoulder every few minutes, like a bodyguard who also doubles as a chef. Aisha was dancing around with her phone, recording everything. Uncle Ibrahim, please say something for my followers. He laughed and said into the camera, to every couple watching, let me give you a free advice. When you stop talking, your house becomes a graveyard. So talk, even if it is arguments. Talk. Silence is sweet for monks, not for married people. Everyone clapped and cheered. A few weeks later, Safia gave birth to a baby boy who was healthy, chubby, and loud enough to wake half of Yola. They named him King Rene. The first night they brought baby Rene home, Ibrahim struggled to rock him to sleep. This boy doesn't understand peace yet, so he grumbled. He's shouting like his mother. Safia rolled her eyes. At least, he's not mute like you used to be. Ibrahim pointed at the baby, smiling. King Rene, listen to me, oh. In this house, we talk through everything. Even if it is crying, no problem. They both laughed again. Their relationship got better by the day. They still had their little misunderstandings, like who should wash bottles or why Ibrahim forgot to buy pepper. But they still talked. Sometimes the talking started with sarcasm, sometimes with laughter, and sometimes with small apology jokes like, I am not saying I am wrong, but you can forgive me first. One Sunday, a young couple from their mosque came to visit, Kabiru and Rukaya. They were newly married but already looking like two people living in separate continents. They sat stiffly on the couch, each avoiding the other's eyes. Safia recognized that posture immediately and she smiled knowingly. Hey, so you people have started the silent ministry, Abi? Rukaya smiled shyly. Kabiru looked down. Ibrahim laughed. My sister, my brother, let me tell you something, oh. We did that ministry before. We even got PhD degree in it. But see where it landed us. To the hospital, to fire and regret. If you love your peace, never let your mouth retire. Safia added. The day we started talking again, healing entered our home. Talking doesn't always fix things immediately, but it stops pride from growing roots. The couple nodded quietly and you could see that the message sank in like rain on dry ground. That evening, after their guests left, Safia and Ibrahim sat in the veranda watching the sunset. Safia sighed contentedly. You know, life really taught us through the hard road. Ibrahim smiled. True, but at least we didn't stay there. We came back. She laughed. And next time we quarrel, Ibrahim raised an eyebrow. Next time, I'll talk first. Safia looked at him playfully. Even if I am the one who is wrong, Ibrahim grinned. Especially if you are the one who is wrong. That way I can still win the argument. She threw her scarf at him. You never change. Ibrahim caught it and laughed. Change? No, I just learned how to love loudly. Now, that was how talking became the love language of Mr. and Mrs. Malice. Hi besties, thank you for watching the story. Please, let's take a moment to wish one of our young besties a happy birthday. Happy birthday, King Rene. May your light shine brightly. What lessons did you learn from this story? Give the story a thumbs up and share the story out with your loved ones. Subscribe to this channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye!